Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to welcome you again, and today we will talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, I would like to begin with expressing the gratitude of our viewers for the videos, for the vital issues raised, because as they themselves shared, the series of these videos is like a school of life online, since literally, the day before the videos are released, people live through everything we talk about in the video. They face these issues in their lives in sort of a concentrated way, and therefore…
No, I disagree. Excuse me, my friends. It's just that when people live their daily lives, they do not notice what is happening to them. This is a norm for us. I mean, we live, we breathe, we constantly have some subjective perceptions. Something is happening, but sometimes it happens unnoticed. Only when we learn about it and it is pointed out to us. You know, it's like hidden symptoms.
They are highlighted.
It's like there is a disease in a person. For example, a headache, and it is predominant. But when a doctor starts asking questions, collecting the medical history, I mean asking about various organs, how a person feels, what his temperature is, and so on, it turns out that there are a lot of things associated with it, which the person doesn't pay attention to. But sometimes they are exactly the very cause of the headache.
Wow.
You see, the same happens in this case. I mean, in our videos, when we talk to our friends, we tell them, although cursorily, unfortunately the format doesn't allow us to talk in depth and call some things by their proper names. Well, you understand it, friends, but we at least explain what is allowed and what people sometimes face. And sometimes when a person finds such a phenomenon in himself, he understands that it exists, you see?
Yes, exactly. And you know, when you have the knowledge, it is very easy to cope and to understand, first of all, what kind of states arise in you, to cope with these states, to understand in general some kind of cause and effect relationships between events in your life.
Unfortunately, you know, there is another nuance, and it is quite significant, I would say. The point is that we cannot always cope with some of the symptoms, like those we talked about in the previous video, about subpersonalities and our perception, how they hinder or do not hinder us. So in regard to them, if they exist, they will be with you. It doesn't matter whether you gain life here, my friend. But as long as you are here, as long as your consciousness is here, subpersonalities will also be here. That's natural.
They will fight for their lives.
Right. They will be interested in you staying here as long as possible. Why? Because for you, the death of your physical body means eternal life and liberation, while for them, excuse me, it is already death. And all subpersonalities are afraid of it. Moreover, they are terrified of it. No matter how bad a life is, it is life. Why? Because we hope that even though things are bad now, everything can change. And we always live in hope. That's our nature. And unfortunately, that's our nature as personalities. A longing for home and a hope for tomorrow come from personality. And even after becoming subpersonalities, these poor, unfortunate former humans still hope that something will change for the better, even though they already understand very well how the world is arranged. Why? Because they see it and they face it, they grasp at life, at our attention, which for them is both nourishment and relief from their suffering, and at the same time, a kind of painkiller, so to say. Our attention, when we recall the dead, when we pay attention to them, for them it is really like, literally, like that very drug which relieves all the symptoms. And the dead can breathe easily and freely, not for long, but at least for a little while. However, we are paying with our own lives to anesthetize what is already dead. So it's not worth it. Yes, on the one hand, it seems unfair. How is it if a near and dear person, someone close to you, has gone into that world? He has become a subpersonality. And how can you not help him? But we can help each other here. Here, our help to each other is real. And here we can really, let's say, save each other sometimes. Save at least this temporary life of another person. Here we can do a lot. But when a person, excuse me, has died, he is in hell. We can anesthetize him. We can give him relief. But we have to understand that it is at the cost of our own lives. Sometimes, here in this world, we are ready to give our own lives to our loved ones. And sometimes we do so protecting someone, and not always even our loved ones, but simply strangers. We give our own lives for the lives of other people. But the thing is that if a person dies, he ceases to be that good, that loving being, and he ceases to be who he was. He hasn't gained life, and he hasn't attained peace. And this already says a lot. And due to that, he is forced to suffer. This is hard for us to accept, because we remember his image, we remember our near and dear person, but is he really like that? Here, unfortunately, it should be noted that any, even the nicest person who lived here, but didn't attain at least peace, he becomes one of those who in the past were described in fairy tales as vampires, ghouls, and so forth. I mean, he will easily take your life just to breathe freely in order to get rid of suffering and pain. And this is true, this is reality. And it so happens that a human becomes a beast that fights for survival. Yes, as personality, he can realize many things, but the point is that while we are here in the physical body, we as personalities do not experience pain. Primary consciousness tells us about that pain. No matter how hard and painful it may be, all the panic, all the screaming and moaning come from primary consciousness, while we are somewhere at the distance. Anyone who has experienced prolonged, severe pain noticed that there comes a time when you observe the whole process from a side. And no matter what is done to your body, yes, your consciousness screams. It is in pain, but you observe it all from a side. And you as personality are not in pain. You don't even feel pity for the body. This is really so. However, when a human dies, becomes a subpersonality and gets into this hell, then he as personality begins to experience what his own consciousness has experienced in this life. That is, the same pain and the same suffering. This is where consciousness actually acts as a judge and an executioner. Usually secondary consciousness. Our secondary active consciousness should help us. It should be our tool. However, when we do not control it, when we perceive every thought as our own, whatever it may be, when we do not control our emotions and cannot say stop in this world, even when we clearly cross the line of morality and ethics, but we cannot stop, and it seems to us that we are like that, while in fact we are being manipulated by a demon in the literal sense of the word, that is a part of the system, a small fragment of Satan, an imp, who forces us to do this. But what does it mean he forces us? Does he inflict pain on us? No. Does he move our hands or our feet? Does he speak for us? No. He only whispers, while we pay for it all. This is really so. We as personality give power to primary consciousness so that precisely primary consciousness, to the dictation of a demon, would fight with the people we love. We finance thoughts in our head These pictures that our dear, beloved person is guilty of something, that he's wrong, did something bad, or he doesn't think and doesn't care about us. All kinds of negativity that often arises even between people who love each other very much. Why does consciousness begin to criticize a person dear to us? A simple question. And we allow it. We as personality do not perceive that. We begin to perceive it only when we become a subpersonality. And much is behind this phenomenon. Behind this phenomenon, I would say, my friends, there is a negative premonition of bad events, which sometimes happen later on. And this is logical. That's where also the desire for magic is hidden. The desire to foretell, to predict, or to see a certain sign. You know, it is the inevitably dead that pushes us into magic. Our desire or yearning to know what will happen tomorrow comes from the dead. That very desire, let's say, to stain what is clean, originates precisely from them. Why? Because they are mired. They are already in the swamp. They have already drowned, but they are still alive. And that's where the whole paradox actually is. It is them who create all this inner negativity in a person, because of which later on, this imp, secondary consciousness, easily picks up the person's inner mood and manipulates him as personality, proving that someone is indeed bad. Even a wonderful, near and dear person may seem bad to you, not because they are, but because someone in you wants you to think so. I mean, it sends power or gives an impetus. I would even put it differently. It's not that it sends you power and an impetus, but if we consider this mechanism in a simplified way, imagine there's you as personality, a subpersonality, and your consciousness, an imp. What takes place? This very subpersonality, as a rule, a multitude of them create a background noise. Thanks to your primary consciousness, you as personality perceive this heavy inner background as a premonition of something, as if you forgot something. You know, it is really as if you forgot to turn off the iron and left it on the laundry, while you are far from home and you realize that by the time you get there, your house will be gone, and everything that you've earned throughout your life will disappear simply because you've let a stupid thing happen. So, there's this very inner background noise. You don't know exactly if you turned the iron off or not, but you, being in the distance, see a smoke in the direction of your house, and this background is already telling you, look, is your house burning down? So this heaviness, this background, is precisely what is picked up by our consciousness. Meanwhile, personality perceives this background noise, again, through primary consciousness. However, secondary consciousness shows us, look, bad things are going to happen, and makes us, as personality, pay for things that were not supposed to happen, and oftentimes they do happen. Many people who face these manifestations begin to believe in certain signs. I don't know, a cat crossed the road, or if they got up in the morning and stumbled, it means their day will be unsuccessful. While some people already resort to magic in the literal sense of the word. This is also interesting. I think many of you, my friends, have met people who walk around with a pendulum. Even before eating in some cafe or restaurant, some wonderful and tasty dish he has ordered. Even an intelligent person with many academic degrees takes out the pendulum and looks in which direction and how it rotates over that food. In other words, whether it resonates with him or not, but he has already ordered that dish, he has already paid for it. And if the pendulum shows the opposite, even if he is very hungry and wants that dish, the person will put it aside and order a different one. Why? Because he trusts the pendulum much more than he trusts common sense. And unfortunately, more and more of such people emerge. Not necessarily a pendulum, but there are many similar things. Regarding that very pendulum, what is a pendulum? Does it really spin by itself? No. We hold a string, and this is all an ideomotor phenomenon. I mean, as our hand moves in micromotion, so the pendulum shows. And as a rule, there is a paradox here. Let me explain. If you order a delicious dish that you want to eat, the pendulum will show that you shouldn't eat it. Why? I'll put it as follows, just to make you upset. When you get upset and think that you have paid for that delicious dish which you love, but it turns out that based on what the pendulum has told you, in this restaurant or during this shift, the chef cooked it incorrectly, or the pendulum may suggest that a waiter has spat in the dish or something else. It's impossible to prove it, but it is better to refuse the dish. Thus, this nonsense begins to develop in your head and you invest your own life and your own money in it, just because that's not what the pendulum showed. Some people may say that they feel internally and so the pendulum shows it. You know, I'll tell you a story which is quite educative and relates to all those pendulums and things like that. Do they work or not? Of course they work. Once, a very interesting experiment with fishermen was carried out. Sport fishermen were divided into two teams in order to test Japanese wobblers and determine the difference between the original, very expensive Japanese wobblers and almost exact copies that were impossible to distinguish visually and had been made in China. If someone doesn't know, a wobbler is an artificial bait for catching predatory fish with a spinning rod. It is clear that, after testing Japanese and Chinese wobblers, the first group of sportsmen definitely asserted that the Chinese wobblers didn't catch, while the Japanese did. This is really true. Japanese wobblers give a much better catch. Chinese ones catch 10 times less fish than Japanese do. Although they are very similar, they are almost identical. What did the people who conducted the experiment do? They put Chinese wobblers into boxes with Japanese wobblers and packed them just as they arrived from the factory, while the genuine Japanese wobblers were put into Chinese boxes, which were also carefully packed. Then they offered the second group of sportsmen to test and confirm the results of the first group. The sportsmen didn't know that the wobblers had been swapped. Yet Japanese wobblers lay in one place and Chinese ones lay in another, just like they were presented for the first sportsman, and the wobblers were exactly the same, but new. So the second group took those Chinese wobblers in Japanese packaging and started catching fish quite successfully. However, when they took real Japanese wobblers, which the first group had been using very successfully, catching 10 times more fish than with Chinese ones, the second group took the genuine wobbler, the genuine Japanese wobbler, and it began to catch 10 times worse than a Chinese one. Here's the answer for you. Why? I'll explain. Because when a person uses a Japanese wobbler, thinking it is Japanese, he believes in it and makes the right rhythmic, verified movements. But when he takes a Chinese wobbler, even if he tries to make exactly the same movements, he doesn't believe in it. And he knows that it is Chinese, that it's a fake. His ideomotor system produces these very micro vibrations which force the wobbler to malfunction. In other words, this is exactly what makes a pendulum spin in one or another direction, as you want. Therefore, all these are the tricks of our consciousness. All these are the tricks, let's say, of that demon who lives instead of you. If he forces you to resort to certain rituals, if he forces you to take a pendulum in your hand Recall those very fishermen. Whatever the demon wants is exactly what the pendulum will show, not even you, my friend. You as personality are merely the one who finances entertainments of dead men with your own life. That's the way it is, no matter how you twist it. So this entire inner background of ours, yes, it can have an influence when we focus on it. And all of our premonitions are again conditioned by the work of our consciousness. Yet who prevents you from changing the world, your world, for the better? Tell me, my friend. After all, you, as personality, finance your future, and even fleeting moments. As a matter of fact, it's enough for you not to accept bad thoughts. It's enough for you, instead of investing your attention in this depressive background noise coming from the dead, it's enough for you to invest your attention in God's love, and you will feel something completely different. You will feel that which is eternal. You will feel that which gives you life and pleasure, that which really emits fragrance, which simply warms you from the inside and protects you from all sorts of demons and dead men. Everything is within you, and this is the ultimate justice. If you want to, you can throw your life in the trash, like a dead cat. But if you want to, you can fly up by actually becoming an angel. Everything is in your hands, my friend. And the difference between the alive and the dead is precisely in where and with what purpose you invested your life. How you spent that resource which God had given you, and how you used the right that He had given you, my friend, the right of choice. If you choose the dead instead of the alive, then it will be, as you said, you did it, whereas God gave you the right to do it. Are the dead to blame for torturing the living? No. That's the way the world is arranged. Are demons to blame that they sometimes torment us and torment quite severely? No. It is their purpose. Is even that very devil to blame for spoiling people's lives and not letting them come to God? No. That's his job. And just for you to understand and know, there is no one more faithful to God than the devil. He knows that there is God, and he stands on this guard, precisely on guard, between the dead world and the alive world. The whole point is that it is exactly the devil who doesn't let those who are unworthy and immature into heaven, there, into eternity. Only a worthy one can join the worthy and be equal among equals. That's the purpose of the devil. However, if we get tempted, if we listen to dead men instead of God's love, tell me, is the devil to blame for that? Is God to blame for that? For the choice we have made? Who is actually to blame? No one but us. And it is exactly us who create that reality in which we exist afterwards. Or we become those who later on torment our relatives and friends with our negative background noise and dream of at least a little attention from them in order to alleviate our suffering, but thereby killing them. Or we choose something different, and we feel how God's love is igniting inside us, how the world is changing, and how power is really coming into us. And we already see, even with our earthly eyes, we see eternity, beauty, and that love which the Lord has sent down here. It all depends on our choice. So friends, let us make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, friends. And let's begin with a simple thing. Let's just love each other. Peace be with you, and God's love.